Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the seventh edition, or I should say episode of Catching Up. I am very happy to have Morgan here today, Morgan Asoyuf. Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I'm just gonna extend my gratitude and thanks to OAC, Ontario Arts Council, for providing us the funding to be able to compensate our lovely artists for their time and their efforts and have them on here. And thank you to everybody who's here, to everybody who's gonna watch this in the future, because this is for you. The reason why we do this is to introduce our wonderful artists in Canada to everybody nationally and internationally. And yeah, so there will be one more episode, and then we're going to take a break and then hopefully resume maybe next year. What else did I want to say? Also, for everybody who is here with us live today, thank you again for being here. I'm going to ask you to, if you had any questions during Morgan's presentation, please type them in the chat room and I will read it to her once the time is right. And then there hopefully will be a 10-minute, 5-minute, 15-minute Q&A at the end. If anybody had questions, feel free to turn your cameras on and your mics on and jump right in. I wanted to give an introduction for you, but honestly, you're such a everything person show that I was like, I'm just gonna let you introduce yourself and go through your amazing history and background and all the things that you do, from wood carving to goldsmithing to all the things that you do, because there's way too many. So I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you. And I'm gonna let you take the podium.
Hi, my name is Morgan Asoyuf. I'm a Ts'msyen artist from northern BC, and I am going to go through quite a few things I do. I won't go through everything because I do actually do quite a lot of different mediums, but from drawing, painting to wood carving, and primarily goldsmithing and gem setting. So yeah, I'm just going to start my presentation, and then I can show you some of my background, and we'll have some talking and some videos and some photos so you can sort of see what I'm about.
Thank you.
All right. 1 second. Just gonna move that over. Okay, so here we go. Oh, not, there we go. So this is a little bit about me. I was born in Prince Rupert. I'm Eagle Clan Ts'msyen from Ksyeen River, which is about halfway between Terrace and Prince Rupert in northern BC of Canada. It's very close to Alaska. For people that aren't from Canada, don't really know where that is. Um, my clans are Lax Giik, Git-Hoon, which is people of the weir net. So basically, Eagle Clan people who love to fish, if you want to break it down. I've been participating in feasts for most of my life, and a lot of the work I do is based around that in community. Teaching, I started teaching back in 2007, and I am still presently teaching. I teach things, very varied things, from goldsmithing to drum painting, regalia, all sorts of different things. Whatever that people have a need for and that they want to learn, I do those courses. Um, and some of my other experience is I've had many grants. I've had 12 grants so far. I'm also a published author and illustrator. I have had 14 professional shows and 3 solo shows. I am apprenticeships and training, so I love doing apprenticeship. It's sort of a traditional Northwest Coast way to learn. Um, I currently work with Ts'msyen artist Phil Gray, who's an incredible carver, and he helps me with my wood carving mainly. I was also an apprentice to Haida artist Richard Adkins for design and engraving. Um, and that's been also a very long apprenticeship. And then I've had quite a bit of schooling. I went to Revere Academy in San Francisco. I was very lucky to take the gem setting course from the owner there. And so I got a good basis for my gem setting. I like with my jewelry to be able to do all the parts of it, and especially so I can understand how to build it to say support gems or other stones. Previous to that, I went to Vancouver Metal Art School with my other main mentor, Gerald Mueller, who's a German goldsmith. And I took goldsmithing and also did custom stone cutting while I was there, which is a little different from gems and gem setting. It's like more stone, so things like marble as opposed to precious gems. Um, the Crucible, I took courses in Oakland, California for bronze casting and clay sculpture and some mold making. That was really fun. I ended up not going into bronze casting. It turns out you need a massive, massive space for it. And I ended up sort of going into jewelry, which is in some ways very interrelated to it. Previous to that, my first diploma that I got was with Blanche Macdonald fashion design program, and that was just sort of the start of everything for me. I think I have a strong fashion background, as you can tell sort of by my aesthetic when you start to see my pieces. Again, I decided I didn't want to do fashion full time. It just wasn't quite the right fit for me. But when I started putting the wood pieces and the fashion and the past goldsmith experience together, it sort of started to combine things in a way that I really enjoyed and wanted to continue to work on, to see where it could lead as like a multidisciplinary idea. So this is a little bit of the work that my mentor Richard Adkins does. As you can see, he specializes in engraving as well as repoussé and sculpture. And he's really good at that. His engraving's very, very fine. If you see the faces they're 3D, and those are the sculptural parts, and often are done by repoussé, which is using like a pitch bowl, and you heat and hammer the metal back and forth to create sculptural pieces. And then his engraving, he's specifically known for using as shading and having really, really fine engraving. I spent a lot of years learning Northwest Coast design with him. He is a Haida artist, but he was very proficient at helping me learn Ts'msyen design because I wanted to learn in my specific style. These are some of the pieces of my German goldsmith mentor who I went to school with for 3 years, of course. And it was an apprenticeship style program with around 10, 12 students. And his work is what kind of drew me into jewelry. I was originally wasn't too sure if I was interested in it. And the way that he built items and used oxidization and gold with gems for color, I just really liked the idea of it. And I wanted to see how it would look to integrate Northwest Coast art with that type of technique that he was using. These are some pieces from my carving mentor, Phil Gray. Obviously, he does a lot of large scale pieces, but something that I always really loved is his finishing on pieces. You can see on the bird's head there, that's in maple wood. All of that texture is hand carved. And even his very smooth looking pieces are usually hand carved and not sanded. So it's just that ability to like really work with the materials that I have a lot of respect for. And he's helped me a lot with my wood carving in the detail oriented bits of it. And he's also Ts'msyen, so it's nice to work with other Ts'msyens as well. So these pieces were from my first solo show at Bill Reed Gallery. It was mainly featuring hollow built jewelry with hand cut stone, inlays, and handmade chains that were handmade hammered chains. Hollow building is a way of building, it's similar to building structures that, like, if you think of a building, hollow building, it has a base and a front, and then it has sides. So the inside of it is hollow, and I've created like structures underneath that help to hold the form so that it's solid. So if you drop the piece, it's not going to just crush in. It actually has a whole bunch of structure underneath the metal itself.
And those
So
are
again,
stunning. Sorry to cut you
oh,
off. I had to say that.
thank
Those are
you.
beautiful. Can you actually, sorry, can you go back? Because
Yep.
what's the contrast there? Oh, that's just a hollow inside.
Yes.
Where
So
the eyes are, right?
yes. Yeah, so that's something I developed while I
Oh,
was in
wow.
goldsmith school, was a way to create floating ovoids, as I call them.
These are
And
great.
yeah, because originally you normally don't have things floating when you're hollow building. You normally would have to have them
Sure.
attached somewhere.
Yeah.
But I figured out a way with my mentor to create like structure underneath and make it's kind of hard to
Make
explain.
them, yeah, no, it's because
Yeah,
honestly, at first, when you went back, then I was like, oh, I saw the shadow, and I was like, okay, so they're kind of suspended.
yes.
But I think the contrast between is it jaxed in the back? Because
It's
the
oxidized. So
oxidized, yeah, sure, sure,
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
I
that
feel like these
contrast really, yeah, sorry, go on.
I feel like these pieces are hard to take photos of because when you hold it in
Mhm.
person, you can sort of see a little bit better the structure
Yeah,
of it.
yeah,
And all of, if you look around the eyes, like that's depth that you're seeing around it. Like it's
exactly.
actually, yeah, you can kind of see on the
Stunning.
raven piece, like the sides of it. So
Yeah.
like the depth to it, and then the whole interior is hollow. Um, and it
Right.
does, it creates like a really nice interplay of like shadow and light, which has been a big theme of my work for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is stunning. It's great.
So this is also a hollow built piece. It is, I didn't oxidize it, so it looks very, very different from the other pieces. But again, you can see the floating ovoids, and there is structures underneath them that's almost like bars that holds them up like that. And then there's some custom cut ivory that I did, and again, the hammered chain. And the other piece is also it's not it I wouldn't call it hollow. I chose to fill it with a custom cut of Picasso marble. um, so I built it in almost the same way, except for that I cut the marble to fit perfectly inside the hollow piece, and then I set it from the back. And you can also sort of see like there's a really cool chain that's attached to that piece. So that piece is a sea urchin. So I used like purples and these sort of like urchiny, earthy colors. Um, and the chain was actually made by a fellow goldsmith student because a lot of these pieces were actually out of my final year of goldsmith school. Um, and I decided to like create a show out of them and obviously add more pieces. Um, but yeah, the chain itself is also hollow and it's like hand woven, and then it's got a hollow inside, which is really cool. Again, this is it's some more hollow building with um, the bracelet here. It doesn't necessarily look hollow, but each of those walls is just a zero point 0.8 material or 0.08 material of silver. And so you have like top, side, bottom, inside is all built out of sheet. And then it's formed and well, I engrave it first and then I form it, solder, build, make the hinges, have the gems set at the last
Yeah,
part
yeah.
usually. Yeah.
Okay. So if I get this correctly, the sides are because I'm seeing black, and
Yes.
that's is that you can see the inside, or have you covered that?
Yes, you can see the
You can
inside.
see the inside.
Yes,
Wow.
as well as the
Wow.
tops,
Wow.
and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but it's just oxidization again. Yeah.
Okay. That's
Oh,
great.
actually, I don't know if you can see my video. I'll read 1 second. No, this bracelet I actually ended up coming back to me, so I don't know if this is helpful,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
but you can see
Definitely yes. What?
like how it's like 3D kind of built like a
Mhm.
structure. Yeah. And then the other one on the right is it's not hollow built, but it's very structural. So I soldered both copper and silver together. This was a crest piece that I did for a dancer in the feast house that was called Copper Faced Wind Dancer. It's what their crest translates to in our native language. These are some more pieces from that same collection. The collection was primarily like mixed oxidized with gold jewelry with hollow
Okay, so that's
building.
cool. Okay.
So I think you can hopefully you can sort of really see the hollow building in
Yes,
the
we can definitely in the left one, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So you can sort of see the shadow and it's like it's 3D. It's got a like a it's about that thick on the outside that goes around.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And then this one I even actually made, if you look at the engraved piece, it doesn't actually, it's not actually soldered to the gold edge. It's actually floating
Um,
within it to just make a nice
wow.
extra little border there. because you can't just make it simple. It's gonna
Yeah, exactly. You have to make it difficult and like very, yes, totally.
if it's
You
not
know,
technically difficult, I don't want
it's not, yeah, exactly.
it.
And the chain on the left one, is
Yes.
that mixed gold and oxidized?
Yes,
Yeah,
so I
okay.
I cast those chain pieces so that I was able
Okay.
to have some gold and some oxidized silver. I just really like the sort of contrast of having them
Yeah,
intermingled in.
definitely. Definitely.
Now the other piece, the butterfly piece, this is was a brooch, and it's made out of the butterfly's made out of very thin layers of oxidized silver, like they were like a 0.05, like super thin. Um,
Sure. Okay.
and then 18 karat gold, and there's like a handmade brooch pin on the back, which I wish I had
Yeah.
more photos of now.
Yeah. I know.
But and then all the little flowers are like formed. I formed them all and made little gold balls to
Gold vase,
stick
yeah.
in there. Yeah, and you'll
Beautiful.
see later in the presentation that I've played with this butterfly idea quite a bit, and I think it comes down again to my love of interplay of like the light and form of things.
Sure. Okay.
These are just some details. So this was me sort of playing around with gem setting where I wanted to see if I could put the black diamond in the eye. I inlaid gold around it as well. And I wanted to make it look like a Northwest Coast eye, but have the gem setting inside of it. And you can see the hand. You can definitely tell I was working with Richard Adkins because the engraving is very
Yes. I
thin.
was gonna say yes.
And the other picture is just a picture of the chain that comes
The
from that
chain
pendant.
details. Okay. Yeah.
And also that pendant has otter fur. It's hollow built, and then inside I put otter fur on the inside of it.
Okay.
I've always loved like furs and natural materials, so you'll see
Yeah.
quite a bit of those in the presentation. The chain with like the little gold mouse woman. It was just to sort of show like those little details that I always like to put in. I always like to put a little details for the wearer that maybe nobody will notice when you're
Yeah,
wearing it.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but
That's
when
what
you're
I'm
putting
saying.
it on, you're like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. You have a little hidden gem for yourself.
Yeah, or
These
like
chains are honestly, so I'm like drooling over these. I'm like, I just want to touch them. Because how big are
they
we
have a
talking
really
about?
nice like weight to them and the
It
feel.
does show. It
Hmm.
definitely shows over the pictures. How big are the links, like in terms of like how like maybe like diameter, millimeter? What are we talking about?
Millimeters, maybe 15 millimeters, maybe.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, okay. All
Yeah,
right,
it
great.
depends. I did a lot of different lengths. I even had some failed experiments where I made them too close together and it didn't move very
Right,
well.
it didn't move. Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, so it's just like finding the right. So you can see also in this that like I like to mix the like some would just be like a 0.08 or some would be a 1 mil, and then some I do like a
Okay.
3 mil like
Yeah,
wire, just so that you have like this interesting like different sizes and
for sure.
yeah, like different sizes and thicknesses to them. Um, okay, so this was this was my next show. This was called Royal Portrait, and it was based a lot on the idea of royalty on the Northwest Coast and our interpretations of that. And I wanted to do something really different with this show because my first show was very it was just based on the jewelry, not just, but it was all pieces of jewelry and cases. And I wanted this one to be more provocative and to speak a bit more about things. So I did choose to do a lot of more writing with this and photo shoots and different things to sort of try and disseminate like some of our ideals in our Northwest Coast matriarchal cultures. So this is just like a nice close-up shot. We will see this one again. This is the mouse woman crown. It is done with prehnite and green amethyst and diamonds, and then it's all like mouse woman engravings. And it's pretty organic. I played around with it a lot because I really just wanted the forms to kind of flow, and then to find the right gems to sort of just accent that after. I do have I've had a deep love of Art Nouveau for my whole life, so I do use a lot of those
Shows
colors.
in this, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but I would say I almost have two really distinct styles, and one is like very dark blackened stuff,
Hmm.
and then one is
Yeah,
like very bright and like white and like
It's very fairy
Yeah,
like, yeah, it's like
yeah,
dark versus, yeah, but
yeah.
like you can tell that it was made by the same person. Like
Yes, but
it's
it's like
still
very like has a bit of a dichotomy within my work of
sure.
like I go one way or the other. It's not
Yes. Like there's no middle grounds.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so this is Takaya Blaney wearing the Musselman crown with
Mhm.
the ocean water protection mantle. So I tried to highlight a lot of people in this show with photography that were doing work for land defense or doing activism or work for MMIW, missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people. And so to really just promote them and highlight them and try and share their voices a bit more, and yeah, and just to also like sort of show the respect of like how much I love what they're doing and all that work that they're doing. The other cool thing about this is that I did make the dress and I also made the fabric and had it printed.
Oh wow.
um,
Yeah, because I know that you also have a fashion background. I was gonna ask if
yes,
you made the dress,
so
so you
yeah,
did.
it
Okay.
definitely comes back to my
Okay.
fashion background
Okay.
sometimes.
Yeah. Good. You're
Because
putting all your
I like
talents on.
I want to see the whole picture. Like I always thought, like,
Yeah.
you see when I was growing up, and I always loved fashion, right? And I would see these editorials where everything's just like it's styled all together, and I was like, ooh, that, but Northwest Coast, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I mean, if you can do it all, why not, right? Then you're in full
Yeah,
control. So,
yeah.
absolutely.
So this is a close up of the necklace that Dakai is wearing. Again, it goes with the Musselman crown, and it's got a lot of prehnite in it, some diamonds, some nice rose cut diamonds. They're kind of hard to see, but they're in the circular pendant.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
then I also during this show was able to sort of like finally get some traction on playing around with these natural materials that I was trying to cast. It's quite a process trying to get natural materials to jewelry status when you're casting them because they don't just come out like as a jewelry piece. Like you have to rework them, recast them, rework them, engrave them, recast them, make them
Sure.
hold bigger, make them lighter. There's just a lot of things that go into it. But I really wanted to sort of show some of our aesthetic of how we live our lives, which is so much based around the salmon. So you'll see the salmon bones here. That's all based on, we have these old stories about how we return the salmon bones to the water, and that brings the salmon people back every year. It's like a show of respect. So I want to sort of find some way to like show that aesthetically where it's not always form line, because a
Yeah.
lot of our work is form line all the time. And then again, like the clamshells, like they've been sort of a big part of my work because we historically, like it was high ranking matriarchal women that would tend the clam beds, and there's a lot of history there. So yeah, it's something that we would be really proud of if we were involved in that, and it was part of our like aquaculture basically pre-contact. So again, we have green amethyst and prehnite on this one, and then that's an actual shell that I set into the top piece, and I was quite surprised at how tough the shell was when I was setting it. I was thought it would break very easily, but it was quite strong.
We're talking about that middle piece at the top one.
Yes, yes.
Oh, right. I just saw it.
You see
Yes.
the middle piece at the top, and it's kind of got
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah, yeah.
ridges.
It got the waves. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just like it's actually like a little piece of shell that,
Oh my God, that's because I was wondering what that is. I was like, is it bone? Is it? Oh wow. And you're saying it
yeah.
was tough to set because of like
No, I'm
the
saying it was the shell was surprisingly hardy. I thought when I was
oh
setting it that it would be very easy to break, but I
easy to
flipped a few
yeah.
times and it was I could just tell how tough it was. It wasn't
Wow.
going to break, yeah.
Okay.
And that was again, that was sort of like
Cool.
some of these are based off of things that I just collected over the years at the
Yeah.
beach or fishing, and I just grew up loving the tiny things in the environment, the at the seaside or in the forest, and I'm like, ooh, what are these little things,
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
it's kind of incorporated into my work over the years.
Yeah, that's great.
So this is the bear claw. It's called actually the bentwood box crown. It's based on both like the idea of a traditional bentwood box, which we used to use to store things and also travel with, depending on how fancy they were. Some were fully carved. Those would have been used to store like really expensive things. And then it's also a mix of that with the idea of the shaman's crowns, which are historical crowns, which we would have bear claws all around them. Um, and we'll see a bit more of it afterwards. This was a collaboration with my dad, who's also a Northwest Coast artist, Henry Green. And this chilkat robe, thankfully, was lent to the shoot by Megan O'Brien, who's a Haida weaver, and it's like this incredible woven blanket, and it looks so regal, the whole thing to me. And then you can see also on the right that Christine, this is Christine Martin, who is also does activism as well as law around land and reclaiming territory and all sorts of different stuff. Um, so she's also wearing some of the mouse woman pieces that you saw. You saw one of them earlier, I think, and then one of them's a bigger one, but you can kind of see how big they are on, I guess, and what the chain looks like a little bit better. These are just some little close-ups of some process on this blue trade bead mantle, and I was playing around with like how to set it up. I didn't set this one myself. I don't do pave specifically. I learned most setting, but pave is its own art and it takes a really long time
It's a
to get
whole
in.
other ball game. Yes, I can definitely
Yeah,
agree with that. Yeah.
I would love to have the time for it, but I do quite
Yeah.
a few different things
Yeah.
already. So I got this amazing gem setter, Jack Mercarian, to set it. It was so beautiful. He's so good at what he does. And I used blue sapphire, which is almost the same cobalt blue as the historical trade beads, which were traded back in the 1800s. And natives really prized them. They called them Russian blues, but they were usually actually from Bohemia. And the Russians were the ones that traded them. So here, oh, this is a really nice photo of this crown. So here's a better close-up of the crown and some of the engraved pieces. I used a peridot with like otter fur around the base, and those are all bear claws on the top. And then this is another picture of CM. I obviously had a variety of models, and they came and were really great about helping me take photos for this show. And again, so the mask that CM is holding there, that's one of Phil Gray's masks, which he lent for the photo shoot as well. And this piece was, this is like a crazy piece because it was just so huge. And I had to figure out soldering these crowns like kind of on my own because there wasn't really anybody like that had a lot of experience that I knew in making. And I don't, there was just nowhere to really even go look at how like a lot of the old crowns in England and different things were constructed.
Yeah,
But
sure. You're right.
I'm doing something totally different too. So it was interesting. And yeah, I had to set up like a lot of soldering blocks. I had to get my mentor to come and we both soldered at the same time to try and get everything properly attached and stuff because it was just took so much heat. But it turned out really beautiful.
It is really beautiful. It's stunning with the bear claws and the
Yeah.
peridot and the that's oxidation again, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But it's
Oxidized.
a very nice unified. So are you heating and oxidizing?
So what I do is like a heated liver of sulfur.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. That's why it's so
So
beautiful and unified because
yeah.
because I use jacks and that's what I used when I first was referring to oxidization. And if you
Yes.
don't heat it properly, you'll never get a unified because this is a big piece. So I'm
Yes,
like,
it
how
is.
did you
Yeah.
do this so unified?
I
Because it
held
just
my
looks
breath when I had to. So
okay.
I had to have it because I was like, oh my God, I'm like, if I have to take all this oxidization off and re-oxidize it,
Yeah.
it's such a hassle, right?
Oh my God. No, that's what I
I'm
was seeing.
pretty
I
good
was
at
like,
oxidizing. I've done it a lot and like I had to have a really big pot to do
yeah.
and get it to
Okay.
the perfect temperature and stuff.
Okay.
I make sure that it's really well cleaned and acided. I brass brush it to take the surface off before I put it in. And I also brass brush it again afterwards. And then I isopropyl it to clean it off and let it dry with no spots. And then I put like a really, really thin layer of what's it called? Like petroleum jelly, just like really, really thin though.
Oh,
And then it just sort of
okay.
seals it. Yeah. but I prefer this to other methods of oxidization. It's what I use for all my pieces. It produces more of like a gunmetal gray than like a flat black.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why I was like, what is this? And then I was like, it's probably oxidization, but it's such a gunmetal
Yes.
color.
Yeah,
It's
so it's definitely like its own special technique of like sort of how to do it.
yeah, and
It's
thank you for
one of
sharing that because I'm always
yeah,
curious to know, like especially with things like this that I had no idea, like the petroleum
yeah.
stuff. And it's like, okay, I would have never known that.
It's the whole
So,
process and like my it's the way that my mentor Gerald oxidized things. And
okay,
yeah,
okay,
and so I learned that from him. You know, I was saying how much I loved his pieces and like just the
yes,
way they looked. I was like, ooh.
yeah,
And so yeah, I still use the same technique
okay,
to the day.
yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that.
This is the bear drum, matriarch bear drum. This drum has done a lot of work in the community. I have a really great collector who allows me to keep things to sometimes be in the community or to go to other shows. So it's really nice that they get to be shown like that and travel around. This design has also been used for like an entire product line with one of the companies that I work with, and it's a very popular one. Um, I'm going to keep moving along because I've got still quite a few slides. So this is another, I called them the mantles. I did like three different necklaces. So there was like water, land, and like missing and murdered Indigenous women. And those were sort of the themes of the three different necklaces. And this one's with cutouts and like red beads with salmon bones, and then this nice big garnet. And I also created the cape that's Lorelei that's wearing it on the right there. She's an activist that does a lot of MMIW work, and so I really wanted to be able to, create some stuff that I could gift to her as well. And I was able to gift her the cape after, so it was really great. You'll see in a second. She does a lot of really cool photo shoots with it, and does uses it for a lot of different work. So that's like my designing an applique that I put into it. And then in this photo, she had asked me to paint her face like a mask, and I've painted quite a lot of masks, so it was interesting trying to paint a human face. And it's like a red dress photo shoot. So this is so Lorelei runs a dance group called Butterflies in Spirit, and they do a lot of work around it, like around healing for the families and stuff. And so I did this big installation. This is at English Bay in downtown Vancouver. That was butterflies that were cut out of wood and then placed on these stands, and like I made all the wings different angles and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting because it when I looked back, I was like, oh, it reminds me of like that brooch that I made like years ago. And the light interplay was really cool. Like when the sun would move, like the shadows would all be different. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm still playing around with some of the same themes as many,
Yeah,
many years ago.
yeah, the butterflies that you showed. Yes, yes, it's yeah. Sorry, I got excited.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we I guess artistically, like we play with themes over so many years. Sometimes we don't even realize it until we're kind of like,
Yeah, and I feel like some of this stuff stays in your subconscious and then it just
yeah,
comes out without you realizing it. And then you realize, oh, I've done something similar years before, or I've had the idea drawn down somewhere. There's
yes,
always, yes.
it's funny like that. So this is some of the process on one of my frontlets. And what I really wanted to show with this, because you're going to see in the next picture, is how flat everything looks when it's finished compares to all of the levels that you have to carve to make the abalone look flat. You have to carve
Yeah.
underneath it like a billion levels so that it looks really smooth. But it's actually the abalone itself is all different thicknesses and curves and different things underneath. So you kind of have to create this. Again, it's like creating structure underneath of things.
So I have an embarrassing question. I don't know what abalone is.
It's a type of shell similar to
Oh, I
like a
thought so. So
mother of
it's like
pearl.
inside. Yeah, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay. Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Except for it was very, very
I
highly
knew what
prized
that
on
was.
the
Yeah.
Northwest Coast. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So
cool.
some things were sort of like our currency pre-contact, and we still hold a lot of love for them.
Okay, cool. Great.
So here you can see the finished piece and how lovely that abalone looks. It looks different in every picture because depending on the angle, you're going to get different
Yeah,
colors
lights.
reflecting.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes it looks purpley from one light or blue in another light. Um, and yeah, this just sort of shows like the finished product with all of those pieces, and it looks nice and uniform and all fit together. And I spent a lot of time matching pieces so that the patterns sort of seem to move nicely together. And I left, there's a little funny detail. So there's a tiny hole in the top of one of the abalones you can see. It's like a little black spot. It's on the top of the face of the big abalone.
Side, yeah.
So pre-contact, we would reuse pieces a lot. And so many of our historical frontlets have pieces with little holes in them that were used for something else previously. So that was kind of like a little ode to that I wanted to put in there. And this is a little process. So you can see the big block there. That's kind of how they start. Is you just big block and you sort of start
Right,
chipping
yes.
away. Very different from jewelry where you're building on
Yes.
all the time. And so this piece was, I wanted to do something totally different and use silver with wood and still try and make it look traditional and still have it be wearable and light. So I had to create this big frame behind it to fit in. And then I had these faces, which I cast. The originals, let's see if I have the next, oh, I don't have the picture of the originals. But as you can see, these are all silver cast, re-engraved, refinished. And then I set moonstones into the eyes. And I used like a white mother of pearl instead of an abalone to do the inlay on this piece. And it's also a silver piece on the chest where normally that would either be painted or carved. So I kind of just, I wanted to play with mixing the two mediums and seeing if I could still make it look really traditionally Ts'msyen. One thing I'll say that sometimes you can't tell from pictures is these pieces are quite small. Like they're like maybe that big.
I was gonna ask you about the size for this one.
Yeah, so they're usually like a max of like sort of 6 inches tall.
Okay,
So
that's great. I love that.
yeah. So I just went they just went into a new show, a women carvers show, Curve it's called. And it was so interesting seeing them after a while because I was like, oh, I'm like they seem so small. Like
But yeah, sure. Where is the show at?
it's in Whistler at the Audain
Oh,
Gallery.
okay.
It's up till
Okay.
May, so yeah, anybody in the location go see it. It's pretty cool.
I'm gonna put that in our next newsletter, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
absolutely. Yeah.
What was the name of the gallery again?
Audain.
Oh, Dane. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyways, amazing show, and you can find some of my pieces. And
Yeah,
even with
definitely.
all carving, I slipped my little metalwork piece in there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's see if we can make this video go. This is a quick little video of it that's nice.
Oh, the crown.
I think I've always been really interested in headpieces. I love Art Nouveau. I love tiaras and crowns and aigrettes. Like I always just found them really interesting. And the other thing that I've always been in love with is frontlets, which is like the Northwest Coast version of the crown, basically. All of those obsessions kind of came together. And I was like, how can we play around with this idea, but also really highlight what we consider royalty within our culture? Oh, no. Oh, there we go. So it just, I wanted to show some videos just so people could see a little bit better of a
Love
picture
videos.
of some things. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of hard sometimes with jewelry and photographs to really to see kind of like how it actually moves and how it is in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're gonna just, there's like, I think just like one or two more videos or
No,
shorter.
we love videos. It's great. Play them
Yes.
all,
And
please.
then we have a few like sort of just cool photos of like my regular line of jewelry that's like less like insanity.
Yeah, sure.
But
I
also
wouldn't
very
call it
cool. And I think it,
insanity.
yeah, it shows my aesthetic
Insanity in a
really
great
well.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. Let's get this video. Okay. This was a ring that I did, a custom ring that was sort of a mix of like sculpture and building.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, you can see again, I had Jack Mercarian set these because his pave is just unmatched.
Yeah.
This is all built in layers, like each piece is a separate piece. And often when I'm building things, like I can sometimes I solder up to 30 times on like one piece. So the technique is wild to try and not get holes and stuff in your work.
Yeah, when you have layers, it's like chances of getting holes or something just And are you soldering all of that for the rings? For the ring
Oh,
that you
sorry, what's
use?
that?
I said, were you soldering all the layers?
Yes, I solder all the
Oh
layers.
my
Yes.
God.
Yeah, I pretty much do everything myself, though I sometimes get other people to help with gem setting if I feel like it's like pave or something that I'm, not experienced with. But generally, I set all my own stuff. I do all my own inlay. I do all my own soldering. I cut my own abalone.
Because that level of solder, I love soldering, so I can solder for days and days.
Yeah.
But like those layers, and I was just
Yes.
looking at it and I was like, is this rivet or is this solder? And I was like, no, this
It's
is
all
soldered.
soldered.
But those like how thick are we talking about with the
Depends on the
layers?
layer. Like I mostly do things in point eight or point oh eight mil.
Okay, okay,
And then but the gold pieces on that were thicker.
okay.
So because I wanted to make like kind of some nice like I don't know, like a structure to it. And then also the circular piece and the big gold piece on top were quite a bit thicker. So but it's just what you have to learn to solder thick and thin together. Like
Exactly.
you could have a point 0.5 mil and then a 1 mil and you're gonna try and not melt the, the little one.
Exactly. That's why in my head I'm like, oh my God, all those layers. You have to have like a definite plan to like go
Yes,
ahead and not melt anything, especially
definitely
the
have a
gold
plan.
parts. Yes.
And well,
Work
I'll
plan.
tell you, so for myself, like I only use hard solder unless I'm fixing something in general.
Are you
That's
serious? You did all of that soldering with hard solder? Oh
so
my God.
I I told you I have a German mentor, right?
Yes, I know. I'm like, oh, because hard solder, honestly, in all honesty, is something that I completely avoid if I can. I would do everything with medium, but especially when it gets to gold, I have a joke that I always tell my students, gold hard solder for me equals Betty Boop just sitting on a wall and looking at you and just
Yeah.
being like, I'm gonna shake, but I'm not gonna melt, and it drives me bonkers. So I
No,
usually,
yeah,
this is
I
so
mean,
funny when I love solder talk with different people.
yeah, hard solder is it's definitely more difficult to work with. I did have a fairly strict apprenticeship, which I liked. I always tell people like I worked with nickel silver for like 8 months when I started. Like it's like I was like it was like hard. Everything I did was the hardest thing you could possibly try to do. And I really learned how to solder though. Like I learned how to solder really,
Oh,
really well.
obviously, you're
Yeah.
only using hard solder and you did all of those layers. Okay, I'm gonna come
Yeah.
to you with my soldering questions from now on. Because you're my honestly, I'm like, I'm so surprised. Because a few years back, I'm from Iran myself, and I went back to Iran after I got my training at George Brown. And I'm sorry for pausing your presentation,
Oh,
but I
that's
have to
fine.
tell you the story. So I went back to Iran and I realized that they only have one solder, which is hard solder. And here's me being like, oh no, I only use medium easy. And they were like, what are you talking about? We only have one solder. And I was
I'm
like,
like,
and
no.
they make like crazy, insane filigree work and like
Yeah.
very detailed, super decorative, ornamental, use a lot of gold. And I was like, you guys only use hard solder? And they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, we only have that. We only have access to that. So with it,
Yeah.
and then yeah, I felt pretty talentless after that. Anyway. Sorry, I let you continue.
Yeah. So I'm not the greatest at editing. You may hear my zombie movie in the background of this. Um,
No, no, it's all good.
but so this is actually a recent piece. I did this like maybe 2 years ago or something. So again, I did an abalone inlay. I'll just talk over the the noise. And this also was like a black diamond, a big black diamond that I had.
Okay.
And I used that for the eye. Again, I had to build a lot of structure inside. You can kind of see the side of the piece, so like you can understand the hollow building. I do build structures underneath. A lot of the times I use this technique that basically like I file the sides so that when they come together, they're both angled, so they just fit. And then I'll put the solder, and then I'll solder it so that it kind of just drops into place. And it's a little hard to explain. I feel like I could do a whole tutorial just on that if I had like a
You
high powered
should. I'll
video
sign
camera,
up for
but
that. I'll sign up for that if you do that.
yeah.
Number
But
one.
because the structure underneath, it's pretty hard. Like you can't really go back in and try and resolder it. So
Mhm.
you really want all your solder to just melt at the same time and
Sure.
everything to just drop into place, hopefully.
Okay.
but it's kind of my specialty. So no. Oh, okay. Here we have some really nice photos. Um, these are done by Georgie Lawson. He's an amazing photographer. That's one of my Salish cousins, Sierra, and her other cousin, um, oh, Marion Jacobs, who's an actress. They're both Squamish. Marion's also Squamish and Bahamian, and so you can see. So the earrings on Sierra, there's like fur. So I've used otter fur and added like copper to it, and then I also like I bought these little drums that I was in love with on off of a native artist that made mini drums, and so I painted them and then I turned them into like these crazy earrings. So this is like an almost non-metal jewelry that that you're looking at, but they were really cool. Um, and again, just like I love like the texture of like our natural materials. So sort of mixing some of my like cast line stuff and taking photos of that, but mixing it with our whole aesthetic of like the cedar and like the weaving and this sort of like texture and feel of like I'm very like I want to touch things and see what the texture is, and I like the smells and the colors. I've been into browns for a while now, so
Well, this is like it has a very nice hue of browns and like
yeah,
oranges. So it's a stunning photo. I was just
yeah, it
looking at it and
feels
I was
really
like,
like
everybody's gorgeous and like the different tones and hues of browns and orange and that the earrings. Yeah.
yeah, and these are my cast line items. My cast line is fairly high end, and yeah, so I want to take some really nice photos of it and really sort of just like show my whole aesthetic, which is also like very it's a mix of like hard things like metals and like gems, and then like these soft like it's like furs and like cedar and like I gotta
Soft
mix it.
skin, and
Yeah, I like it all together. This is recent. So these are Virago Nation. They're a native burlesque troupe. And so it was really fun. I got to do a photo shoot with them. We're doing like a royalty theme. And I was like, me. Um, and so yeah, we did this whole shoot and they were just like, they looked amazing and they wore a lot of
wait,
the
what was the
pieces.
name of their group again?
Virago Nation.
Brago.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, I love like working with all sorts of different people in the community. Like it's really fun for me. I like seeing what everybody's doing and like where the culture's at and being
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
And this is Monday Zankpi. She's also part of the burlesque troupe, but we've also done some work separately. So this was some of my earrings that she's wearing for a shoot, as well as I also made the regalia. And she's mixed Sepawemic and Ziwe, which is from Africa as well. So kind of trying to like, I don't know, I'm interested in like people's different mixes and like how do we like honor that without it always like the aesthetic isn't always one thing. Like let's do mixed aesthetic and see what happens. And so some of that fabric is actually Z-Way fabric that's like vintage. And then I also did like sort of like a more traditional like painted form line and stuff. So this is Marion Jacobs again, the actress, and so we did this really cool shoot. This crown that she's holding, it's like a tiara. It was actually a model for a tiara that I'm still working on. It seems like things take me a while sometimes, but the tiara that it's a model, I will go so far with models. I normally just make paper models. But sometimes if it's a very expensive material, I will go so far as to make a metal model of it.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Like I have with bracelets and stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm like, I need to make sure that this is going to be the right size or that something's not going to go wrong. So the end piece that I'm working on still is 18 karat mixed with ebony, hand carved ebony. So I definitely wanted to make a proper model, and I actually learned a lot making it. But it's also still a really fun piece on its own. And it's got the little descendants faces, little carved Ts'msyen faces with some pearls and blue topaz. And then Marion's also wearing the librette, which is like a lip cuff, which I was developing over these last years, which is like a new way for us to wear our librettes. Like historically, we would have the cut lips, um,
Okay.
which obviously is not going to work for everybody nowadays.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find a way to play around with it. And she's got all the trade bead necklaces. And then again, my fashion background, I made this corset using abalone fabric from another indigenous retailer that had made some fabric. Because I thought, ooh, abalone fabric. I was like, this is going to go with so many things that I make, right? Um, and
Yes.
yeah, really cool. Um,
When I'm sorry, when is that golden ebony piece coming out? I'm gonna keep track.
I've finally made a timeline again because it's so hard for me to get to the projects that I just want to work on a lot of the time.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I'm
We all
always
struggle with
like,
that.
I'm like, I have orders, I have like people are like, we need this, and I'm like, ah, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, when do I get to do the thing that I
Yeah.
want to be working on right now, you know? So I'm hoping I made up a new timeline and I put it in the schedule.
Great. I'm gonna follow up because I would love to see that.
Yeah, so I'm aiming for like March to be finished because I
Okay.
can't work on it full time, but if I can schedule
Sure.
it in like once a month at least, I think I can get it done.
Okay.
Um,
Can't wait.
yeah, this is just a close up of one of my set of clamshell earrings. Again, like, you know, I go on these little tangents with colors, like the greens and the sea foams. So again, there's a mix of like green amethyst. I also use some peridots and tourmalines, green tourmalines. In person, you can really see all the different colors. They're just like little different shades of green in there. And then again, like the dentalium is another natural material that we used as currency pre-contact. So I love using that in my work. They're just these little shells that had little creatures on in them. And people would dive for them. There was like the New Chalnu specifically on the coast were known for diving for them. And then we'd trade them. All over North America, people traded them. So they come in different colors. There's white ones or green ones, as far as I know. There may be other colors out there. But I like to use them in my pieces as well. So we have clamshells and sea foamy colors and dentaliums. It's like it excites something in like my little primal brain. Like it's like this history, this like the ancestors are like, yes, get that.
Well, you glow when you're talking about it, which is
Yeah,
interesting to see. Like you're so into it, you're so passionate about it, and you see that. You see that in the work and when you talk
yeah,
about
I
it.
love the
So
natural materials. Like everybody always
it's
knows, like
great.
they get something cool. They're like, Morgan, they're like, I have a grizzly bear claw. And I'm like, ooh.
Yes.
It's
Bring it
great
up.
because people bring them to me and either people we trade or might want me to do a piece for them using that. And I love working with they just have an energy to them that's different than metal. Metal is a little bit less um I don't know, it wasn't alive as much as the natural materials. And I think that's it. That's a few of my engraving tools there and sort of my little bench land where I lay things out and play around with them.
Right. I got distracted for a second.
Oh, I don't know what I did now. Oh, there we go. I think
There
we're
we
out.
go. You're back.
Am I unshared on the?
Yes, you're
Okay.
unshared. I'm sorry. That was fascinating. Honestly, it was such a breath of fresh air. I was so
Thank you.
tired before this, but now I'm all like, holy, I learned so much in what, an hour from you? Your students are lucky to have you, really. Great. I feel talentless right now because I was like, you know everything, everything and everything. Um, I had there was a question and somebody asked, I think you already answered it though, when about the oxidization period, it's liver of sulfur and not jacks, right?
Yes, absolutely. I use liver of sulfur. There's two different ways that you can purchase it in like a goldsmith store or a jewelry store. It either comes in a package in these little rocks, or you can get it in like a stabilized gel form. The rocks work great. They go bad, like they go inactive, I guess, a little faster. So I usually use the gel form. As long as you keep it in the dark, it lasts for like a year, so it's kind of nice. And I use a heat bath basically. Like I heat up water and then I put the liver of sulfur in and I let it heat to like a certain temperature and then I put the piece into the water with the liver of sulfur heated. Yeah.
It's just that color was just Marvelous.
It
Uh,
also helps that I brass brush because the brass brush, it, I don't know, it gives it kind of a texture a little bit.
Okay, because I used to do the brass brush, but just because sometimes the using like especially the Jack solution, I don't find this as effective as the liver of sulfur. And just because it was inconsistent, the brass brush would make it look worse. Like it would just bring
Yeah.
out all the inconsistency a little bit more, like the contrast you
And
would see
so
it more.
the other thing that I would say too is, yeah, if you brass brush your thing that's been liver of sulfur and it comes off, your liver of sulfur has not bonded properly into like the level of the material that you need. And so it would have come off for your client anyway at some point. So it's better to find out before your clients have it,
Yeah,
and then
sure.
you can just reoxidize it. Yeah.
Deoxidize it. Okay.
Yeah. I find the liver of sulfur just, it bonds in, where the Jax is a little more on the surface, I find. Yeah.
Okay. I may come back to ask questions about this because I'm going to
Yeah.
try it. I'm going to try it. I had a question about your did you when you were at Riviera Academy, did you work with Alan himself
I
or
did.
how
Yes.
was that?
It was amazing. I was so lucky to get to work with Alan because I'm like,
Yeah,
and the school closed shortly after. Like
yeah,
I think I really was, I started very young in the art industry. I was 18 when I did my fashion design diploma. And then I moved pretty quickly into goldsmith school. I did the fashion design diploma when I was 18. Then I moved down to the States to do the Oakland, where I learned crucible, where I learned bronze casting and investment mold making. And then I went to Arizona and I was supposed to apprentice somebody. It didn't work out. So I ended up coming right back to Vancouver and going into goldsmith school. Um, and then sometime after I graduated, I got a grant to go down to San Francisco, and work with the Revere Academy because I was like, oh, I want to take a gem setting course, but I didn't want to take the like $20,000 European one
sure,
where that's all you do, because I'm like, I don't want to just be a gem setter, not just a gem setter, but it wasn't my only thing I wanted to do.
sure. I get it.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so I was so lucky like to have him teaching our class because they had all kinds of other different instructors. I think I really got the best out of that program that I could have. And like, yeah, his school closed not that long after, and same with Gerald's school, like not that long after I went there. And I was just like, man, I'm like, I got like the older like industry guys that I got to work with that were all just like, mwah. Like they're hard on you though. Like you have to really want to like be in pain all the time. Like
that's how you learn though. That's how you end up doing all of your solders with hard solder.
yeah. Yeah,
Really.
it's real. Like they don't go easy on you. But
No, because that's I think what we often talk about this amongst ourselves at school that we can't implicate the same methods anymore because there's so many I'm trying to word myself very carefully here. There's so many sort of restrictions about how you approach subject matters, and you can't be too harsh, you can't be too strict. But I also, coming from having learned from that generation a little
yeah,
bit, is like it works. It really works when they're, and they don't have to be like mean strict, but implicating laws and regulations and making it look like it's a serious job and it's not like, oh yeah, do
yeah,
whatever you want.
yeah,
Is really at the end of the day shows
yeah.
itself and the craftsmanship.
Well, for
Um,
me, it was ideal to move from like I grew up like I was fishing with my grandpa. Like he yelled at me, you know. He wasn't like easy on me. I apprenticed my dad for a while wood carving. Like I was used to apprenticeship, so I was used to like grouchy older people who would be like, get
yes.
it together and like do it this way. And I was like,
Yes, exactly.
okay. And I learned like, I'm like, okay, like I'll just listen and I'll because you know what, you have way more experience than me. And so I really just like apprenticeship works great for me.
Yeah.
I didn't mind just like being cool with it. Like I'm not gonna argue my mentor. Like I was like I understood that like I was here to just learn. And if I didn't like it, I could always learn something different later. Like I was there
Exactly.
to learn from them. And it caused me to be a favorite student with many mentors. So
I love your attitude. Honestly, I'm like, why didn't I know you earlier? Also, that was my next question, talking about your father, Henry, you said, right?
yes.
So how much did he have an effect on your artistic path, I guess, or
Yeah, definitely.
career?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like seeing the art form from a younger age and like working with him on and off. Definitely, I can't imagine I would have necessarily gone into Northwest Coast Art if I didn't grow up seeing it
Sure.
all the time. Like
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
my dad does a lot of really big structures like totem poles and like large scale carving and stuff. He also used to do jewelry. I never really worked on jewelry with him. I
Well, you
worked
saw it when you were growing
but
up.
yeah, I always saw it, and I was always like around the galleries and different stuff and seeing things. And it influenced my career a lot because growing up, being seeing what he dealt with as like a native man, and him coming out of residential school, and all the struggles that he faced just dealing with people and like trying to sell his work and stuff. It really I came out in the industry like going hard. Like I was like, I'm gonna create my own market. I'm gonna have my own clientele. I'm gonna go direct to client, and that's what I've done. And I've gotten patrons, I've gotten supporters, funding, granting. You know, like I went to school. All of these trainings that I did, none of that was like I didn't have money to pay for that. I got that all funded. And I worked really hard to get scholarships and grants and every single other thing I could to just like make sure it was paid for. Um, so yeah, like definitely coming out with that attitude that like nothing is a given, and like if you want to be good at something, you better work your ass off and like and really just put that time in. And and I always remember Gerald saying to me, like he's like, if you want to be good at something, minimum 10,000 hours. And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
And it's true though. It's true. And when you want to do multiple art forms, that means you have to put a lot of hours in to be good at all of them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. To be good at all of them. And
Otherwise,
then
it's like wishy-washy. If you're just like sort of good, but you do a bunch of stuff, it's like, okay, but like, are you really a craftsman at each of those? Like, I'm like, I want to be like really good at like every one if I can.
yeah. It's honestly great to hear that because I often think about because again too, just my own personal experience, because in Iran also there's a lot of craft that's kind of dying,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because either the younger generation is not interested, or for us also after the revolution, after the Islamic revolution, there was a lot of change in terms of wanting to sort of kill that old heritage and
Hmm.
sort of shove it under the rug. So both sort of methods, like there's Persian filigree is almost dying because nobody else
Yeah.
is doing it. So just right now when you were talking about all this stuff, it's I was wondering like how do you think it's being passed down? Like, are there enough people interested, like yourself, in the
Um,
community to be able to sort of? Because I find the goldsmithing in the indigenous community fascinating, and it goes way back before the European sort of introduction of goldsmithing and
mhm.
nowadays art jewelry. I just people who often log in know I have a very sort of love and hate relationship with the term art jewelry because like I look at a lot of the art jewelry right now in the world and I'm like it's great, but like there's so much more that comes from a lot of actual artwork and heritage that's not considered that now. But yeah, sorry, I'm just derailing. But going back to my question, like, do you think there are enough people interested to learn all of these crafts and pass it down and teach it to other people like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. Like, there's just so many different parts of our art forms. Um, I
That's what
would
I
say
mean.
that our art forms in general are really thriving right now. Like, our
Okay,
people are just obsessed with them. Like, once,
good,
like, I feel like the youth now are really moving on it, and
good.
like, and it's very exciting. Like, everybody's
It's
doing cool
great.
stuff. I think that there's definitely room for a lot more training when it comes to things like goldsmithing. That's not as common for people to have goldsmith background
Sure.
in native art. But there's like quite a lot. There's a lot of people doing carving and design and all sorts of and traditional tattooing and all sorts of stuff. I would like to see like more accessibility to training for goldsmithing within the native community because
That's it. Yeah.
there's a great thirst for it, but there's barriers in terms of both location, being remotely located, especially if you want to stay in your own territory, which a lot of people do, which I think is amazing. Um, and then also you know, just the programming that's available may not work for us, our lifestyles or our personalities, or like Native people, we're different. We like to learn in a different way. And so, yeah, I'd like to see more development there, like in terms of like programming. But yeah, I
That's
think
kind
it
of
was a
what I
great,
was trying to get at, is
yeah,
that the accessibility, like I'm sure
yes,
the
yeah,
interest and the thirst is there, but
yes,
the accessibility, the
yeah,
funding, the schools, all of that is
yeah.
probably not as you
It's a
know.
lot, yeah, that's a lot more difficult. So yeah, I don't know.
And it's something that needs to be talked about, I think. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking these, because it's I
Well, and
often
I
find
mean, and
that.
it's like I keep talking to like different people and organizations about it. Like I'm like, we could set up an online course. Like I'm like, it would make it accessible. Like I've seen online courses for engraving in the States, and they have these high-powered cameras, and they're able to teach remotely. And that would remove like a lot of barriers for people that don't necessarily want to leave their reserve or their family, or
Exactly.
and or maybe can't afford to live in Vancouver because it's crazy, crazy expensive here,
Yeah,
and then
well,
to pay
that's
for
it.
school on top of that, right? So
That's it.
yeah, I'd love to see some of those barriers removed for sure. I think I saw something else in the chat.
Yeah,
Lindsay.
neglected, yes.
Okay, so the crown has narrow spaces between panels. So yeah, the interior structure of the crown is really interesting. Do you mean which crown, first of all?
Yeah.
The
Which one?
I'm assuming that you're talking about the bear crown. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Um, so basically I used like two sets of wire. So there's like a circular wire on the bottom and the top behind the panels. Um, and so the panels are partially attached by that and partially attached by the gem settings. What I did was I soldered the panels together like two at a time, two at a time, two at a time. They're not actually together. They do have a gap. And so I used the gem settings to hold that together until I was ready to solder it to the circular piece of metal that sort of holds the whole thing together. So I just kind of kept soldering them in parts until I had a big, they go all the way around, because I was like, okay, two together, now four together. Um, but yeah, it's a little hard to explain. I wish I could show you some pictures right now, but
You never know.
maybe we can follow up with some photos. Yeah,
Definitely, I would
yeah,
love to. I was actually gonna say, maybe I'll reach out to you once things are a little bit after maybe the holidays,
yeah, yeah.
to talk and see how we could help with Metal Aid, maybe for some workshops. We
Yeah,
would
that
love
would be
that.
so cool.
That
That
we
would
would
be
love
great.
that.
I'm open.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Great. Great. This was honestly a breath of fresh air. You have no idea. Very, very
I'm glad.
flattered.
No, this has
Yeah.
been like, yeah, a really nice
Thank you.
conversation.
And you're
Yeah.
a very good presenter. Like you're just very natural. Very
Thank you.
natural. I'm guessing you've done this a few times. And Lindsay's as excited as I am. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for
Thank
putting the
you. Yeah.
time. I'll definitely be in touch with you, because I have a
That'd be
lot of
great. Yeah.
questions, and it would be great if we could work together more.
Yeah, no, I would love that. That's great.
Yeah, you're an absolute pleasure. There's no more questions? No? Okay. I guess we'll just say goodbyes here. And again, thank you for everybody for being here. Thanks to you, Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you for having
And
me.
we would love to, yeah, we would love to see you again and
Awesome.
talk more. Okay. Have
All
a good
right.
one. I'll be in
Yes,
touch.
have a good evening.
Bye bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye.